Everything is happening through these screens.
How are we getting the most out of that person?
I want to see this thing grow long term.
Amazing story. You have such a unique perspective on that.
Schedule a 2-week vacation.
I applaud those models.
Undervalue.
Secure your digital footprint as well.
Why were they even put in place in the first place?
Only the most adaptable survive. Let's get to the leaders list. Are you chasing market signals or are you turning them into growth signals? You know we don't need to collect more data. We need to know what to do with it. And that's why unlocking the potential of big data should be on your leaders list. And it is why Sarah Tamilarasan is on today. She's the CEO of SOTAOG. And they're an AI platform that's helping CEOs unlock 20% more cash flow by turning billions of data points into predictive, actionable insights. It's like handing your ops team a $1 billion brain that doesn't sleep. I'm Bryon Morrison. Let's get to the leaders list. Sarah Tamilarasan, it is so great to have you here on the leaders list. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Bryon. It's great to be here too.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I've been looking forward to this conversation since I heard about your company from day one. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, let's start off with, tell everybody what SOTAOG does, and I know you work, specifically in the energy and heavy industrial space. So just kind of frame that up for everybody so we can all understand where you enter the business.
Absolutely. So SOTAOG today, what we do is we sell optimization software in the heavy industrial space, as I mentioned, and our ideal client is actually the chief operating officers. We talk through their operations. We can essentially look and see inefficiencies real time, and we would convert that into cash flow. And now, of course, with AI, you can predict a lot of that before it happens. And if you can make some changes today to prevent that from happening tomorrow, that's a huge win for everybody. So
I love it. So, when you talk about that space, it's interesting that you said you're typically working with the COO. Because most people hear software, AI, they think tech, and it's obviously not. And frankly, I would argue AI is not a tech initiative, right? It's a culture initiative, and in your case, it's operations, right?
Yes, because it's operating cash flow. When we convert that into operating cash flow, and that's
how often does it
every day.
Is it COO or CFO? Because I would have assumed that the CFO would be pretty interested as well.
They are. There's definitely many associate roles, and the CEO is as well. But we touch operating cash flow very closely and with a lot of detail. And that's typically under the chief operating officer's budget. Because, most of the time what you'll find is he's got an entire team analyzing. There's a lot of manual analysis that goes through because people have to look at few things because they're technically complex. So it's not automating that part. It's automating a lot of the other mundane and surfacing those issues real time to the right person, so they can make decisions.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And you've been at this with SOTAOG for almost 8 years, isn't it?
Yes, it started as an idea. And but at that time, I just wanted to bring in the real-time data from the field. Back then, a lot of customers, they couldn't afford it. So say 15 years ago, it was really the big companies that could afford it because you needed to host your data on servers. Now you got to hire people to manage your service. The IT team has to do that, and it's just a lot. It's an entire expensive project all on its own, right? So the small companies were actually left out. With the cloud, I was able to go sell it to the smaller guys and say, hey, it's cheaper. You don't have to manage any servers. We'll do it for you. And let's get this data in. But even when we started with that model, I knew that it's going to be a crowded market. I knew it's going to be very quick before a kid in his garage is going to be able to do this, what I'm doing. So the idea was to bring the data in, know exactly, be very, very clear on what the pain points could be and how we could make that transformational. And it's what we're doing today. So we have more ideas on how to compete and how to do a lot of things for our customers. We're very passionate about our customers. So how about this?
Well, before we talk more about the business, tell me about your career path and how you got to that previously before the 8 years started.
Yeah, great. Love to tell you more about that. So yeah, I graduated as electrical computer science engineer. I had a couple offers, one actually from Walt Disney, and the other one was from Marathon Oil, which was oil and gas. And I had some student debt, so Marathon Oil paid $20,000 more, and they were closer to home, so I picked them.
To heck with Walt.
Yeah, I know. And yeah, I moved. That was in Findlay, Ohio. I felt the town was a little too small, just given my background and everywhere that I had come from. So I moved to Houston with Marathon Oil, stayed with them for a very long time. And I felt like my career had peaked because I was on $1 billion project with Africa. I went to Europe and I kind of wanted to, I was very ambitious. So I took on a job with a smaller company and I got to kind of do all the facilities. I got to build, and so that's where the idea kind of started too. So they were actually valued at $1 billion. And I still remember going to the site and the sensor wasn't working and they were doing it manually. We were selling oil, 5,000 barrels a day manually. And I remember asking the guy, like, first of all, it's 2011. I had never seen manual operation in Texas. And because I came from a big company, Marathon Oil was making 400,000 barrels of oil a day, right?
Right.
And I was trained to put sensors on everything and fail safe and all of that. And I was like, I looked at it, I was like, what exactly are you doing?
Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here, right?
And he said, I'm gauging your tank. I was like, what is that? He's like, well, I put this wire in and I look at how much oil we have in the tank. I was like, 2011 in America?
So great.
So anyways, but I had a lot of close proximity with the chief operating officer. I told him, you're definitely probably losing 3% because you have no log either. It's his word against your word. I'm not sure how you do that, but with the sensor, it's logged and you've got time. And, you can do a lot of it. Anyways, long story short, I assumed it was a 3% loss. When we actually put sensors in, it was 7%. And, but then, this whole affordability thing comes in. So at Marathon Oil, I would spend $1 million because it's wired and, we had all this overhead. But wireless technology was just coming out and I got to deploy that. And it was about 100,000, including labor and everything else. So that was exciting. And it fueled that ambition in me where they couldn't afford it. We made it happen. They had a problem. They wanted to fix it. They didn't have the money. And hey, it's about using tech to do that. And it was so fun to see them scale from 10,000 barrels to 30,000 barrels. And we added 2 people on staff. Wow. They tripled production.
That is solid revenue per employee.
Yes. And it was fun to be part of that. And I was fairly young. I was just 30 at that time. So it was very exciting to be part of that.
So like most other entrepreneurs, you saw a better way and saw that there was a market that was being ignored and you knew you could fix the problem, right?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to take a chance. And so Robert Stowe, my co-founder, I met him when he was a vice president at Marathon Oil. And he had left. So I had left to go on to the smaller company where I did have fun until we got to 30,000. And then they started to, flatline. he had gone to London, and he was running a company, and now he had decided to come back to Houston. So I pitched the idea to him, and I asked him for money, of course. And he said, well, I'll give you the money, and you've got 4 months to get a customer. And if you don't, we'll just have to part ways, and you're going to have to accept that maybe this wasn't a great idea. So, so that was, and I still remember so clearly, it was 4th month, last week. And our first contract was, I think I got a check for $6,000. That was our first, and our first official, I know. I keep trying to look for the picture of that $6,000. I can't find it, but 40,000 was our first contract that we had. And it was just me building a presentation. And
That's awesome.
That's fun.
That's awesome. There's nothing better than that moment where you go, oh my God, somebody just believed in what I'm doing. And then a client believed in what I'm doing that could solve the problem. It's
fun.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
So after you went through that process, now you've had so much success since then. And so how would you describe the growth stage that SOTAOG is in today?
Yeah, it's a myth, right? When people say if you get more sales, it solves all your problem. Actually, it could accelerate or surface
exacerbate
problems it could showcase all the other problems you might actually have, and it forces you to be a leader. It forces that learning curve hits very quick. Because you could have unhappy customers, and with large contracts, if they fall through, your company is dead. So there's a lot of moving parts, and you can't really have a band-aid anymore to kind of hold it together, right? And it doesn't all depend on you, because now you scaled your team. If they don't perform, the company just goes out. And especially in what we do, it's all people. My only expense is salaries and my AWS bill, because we're built on AWS architecture. That's it.
Sure.
I don't have machinery. I can't. So the profitability.
You've got to have software. You've got to have software costs in there somewhere.
Yes. So that's the AWS cost. Yeah.
I see. All under AWS. Got it.
Yeah. And then we use shifters inside to communicate with other clouds as needed, but majority of it is in AWS. So anyways, so essentially the profitability of SOTAOG is a direct function of the productivity of the employees and their mood. Are they excited to come to work? Do they, how do they find this? Do they enjoy their work, what they do, though they might think they do? Because, and that was hard too, because my background, while it is technical, I'm not a coder. I do know coding. I just, I don't know. I just never took a big interest in it. Looking back, if someone had said, Sarah, one day you're going to be running a tech company, I might have paid more attention. I hated, I don't know what it was. I love the inputs and the outputs of a program. It's just I found it a little boring. Every time you run a program and it's got bugs, I felt like every time I fixed one, 100 would appear. And I was like, how is this possible? This does not make sense. So anyways, I've made bad hires. It cost the company. And then eventually you figure out how to make good hires. And then, you figure out your sales and marketing, because again, I'm an engineer. I couldn't hire sales or marketing, so I had to figure it out. So there was a lot of learning curves, and then, and we were in situations where I brought in a contract and I looked at the team and I realized we couldn't deliver on the contract.
It's a very frightening moment.
Very frightening moment.
And so, of course, you went back to the client and said, I'll just give you the contract back. We're not going to do it because we can't do it, right?
No. I figured out.
No, you figured it out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so in terms of the stage that SOTAOG is in today, it's understanding how culture impacts profitability.
Mhm.
That speaks to like this concept of a service profit chain. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the idea that if you have happy staff, that will translate to better work, which translates to happy customers, which translates to higher profitability. And so,
That's right.
like I don't know if that was built intentionally and you feel like you knew that ahead of time, or was that an intuition for you?
I think because I was an employee myself in big corporate America,
Yeah.
I just figured, let me put myself in the employee shoes and kind of go from there. So it wasn't a gut instinct, maybe, but it was more based on my experience. And again, I'm not perfect, but a few things we hold close at SOTAOG, as I alluded to, it's intelligence, hard work, and integrity. I also had to wake up to the fact that I can't control 100% of the happiness because, they've got personal lives outside of the work.
Right. That's right.
So it was also about setting few standards around the expectations and keeping that equal for everybody. Just because I joke around or I have a great relationship with one person doesn't mean they get to slide on deliverables. If there's one area that I do not compromise on or I had to pick on, it's integrity. So one thing is if you say you're going to get something done tomorrow, I really, really don't want to hear a story about it. What I would prefer is you tell me ahead of time that it's not going to be done, instead of telling me when I'm expecting it. So I try to, similar little things where you don't have to be a genius, you just have to.
So intelligence, hard work, and integrity, those sound a lot like the hard work you can obviously affect, right? I mean, intelligence you can train and you can affect. Integrity, it is what it is. But I would argue like all three of those things are those are your hiring points. That's how you decide how you add to your team, right?
But it's really hard to measure hard work and integrity in an interview.
Yeah.
And I used to make mistakes on that a lot.
When did that change, Sarah? I mean, like in terms of in the 8 years, how many employees do you guys have now?
We're a team of about 10. It's about six to 10. We oscillate.
Yeah. Okay. So you're under double digit, but insane profitability, which I love. So as you've started doing that, was that like halfway in, or have you consistently just kept adding, one or two people each year? Like when did that change?
You mean on the hiring? How we?
Yeah.
We try to have a repeatable tech, and then of course to upgrade the product and improve the product, we keep hiring more folks as we grow. Because for example, in the early days, the front end developer and me, or back end developer and me, we used to do all the UI UX, dashboard designing, all of that.
Sure.
Now, as we grow, we hire a UI UX designer, etc. So like those little ancillary roles that we used to wear multiple hats to do.
Yeah. And at this stage, are you still driving a lot of the functional roles in the organization, or have you started to do you have HR? Do you have marketing? Do you have R&D? Do you, is it more we just look at the team and we go, hey, everybody handles something?
No, I definitely don't have HR quite yet. Eventually we will. And we're actually a bootstrapped company that got a U.S. Department of Energy contract. So I do a lot more of the sales and marketing now. Which is also fairly complex, but I've learned it over the years. I'm much better at it than I was 7 years ago. I understand how to get my point across. And on the functional role, I have been able to share that responsibility with my co-founder, Robert, now. He kind of manages a little bit more of the team. And so that frees me up to do more, figure out the strategy, figure out how we, like right now, we're looking at our next targets, a number of customers and where the product is, etc. And I'm having really great conversations, especially on the state levels now. With the U.S. Department of Energy contract, we were able to, it opened doors at the state levels.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was exciting. That was different because we had always done only private. So while we were really good at getting private customers, this was really eye-opener to see how the government works. And it's actually fantastic. They work really well. They're great customers.
That's great. That's great. And that's also validating, right? I mean, when you land a client like that, everybody recognizes it. So
Yeah, it
that's
increases
awesome.
our brand value. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let's talk about you have a unique perspective also because you truly are an AI enabled organization, right? And so it's a little bit different with so many people come on to the leaders list and we talk about what's on your list and they are researching AI. They're starting to use AI. They're just getting, they've some have actually executed nice pilots against AI, but yours is just in a different situation. So what's on your leaders list as an AI enabled company?
So my short-term leader list is to figure out the sales and marketing part.
Okay.
And we're going to most likely ramp up to raise our very first round at the company. So figuring those nuances and complexities. So we've got that. But some days I think I'm not so worried about the round. I'm just more worried about having consistent methodology on sales and marketing, bringing in customers correctly with the right size contracts, because the contract sizes can vary so much, and you kind of so there's definitely a strategy behind that on who you bring in and who you pursue, etc., and the sizes and how you diversify all that. So it's not, and so I'm trying to figure out that strategy on scaling sustainably.
Yeah, moving beyond you, right? Like you just talked about it, and I think it's so good for everybody to be able to hear this because everybody goes through this process, right? Where you started the whole thing, you become, you go through the process of understanding how to get things done, but then you have to be careful because you can also become the bottleneck, and you can keep other people from being able to step up, especially if you're good, and clearly you are. So
I work very hard. So I tell people it's not about being good. It's really about just working as hard as you can and becoming
perspiration over inspiration, right?
Yeah, 1% better every day. It just compounds after a while.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So okay, so that's interesting. Now let's kind of think about the shift from that's how you're managing your business. I always like to get that perspective because you are in the trenches. You are a leader, an entrepreneur. You're doing that so people can learn from what you're experiencing. But you're also an expert on helping people understand the difference between, market signals and growth signals, and really understanding that data and how it changes the organization. So talk to us a little bit about how, if I'm a CEO and I'm running a business, how I can start to learn from your area of expertise and what should be on my leaders list.
It really depends on which stage you are and how big you are, right? Like, so if, for example, a company like Marathon, I think innovation is hard to adapt. And I mean, there's a lot, it's harder to do new things as a big company. So I think it's how do you reform the culture so you don't lose out or lose the edge on becoming, for example, like looking at deploying wireless sensors to cut your cost by 90%. Maybe that's something. company that big never really looked at, thought through because they're so rigid, right? The smaller companies, I think sometimes they do feel that because they're smaller, they're agile, they can move faster. Sometimes I do notice a little bit of an arrogance that goes along with it too.
You gotta have a little bit of chip on your shoulder, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I see that a lot with a lot of CEOs. And it's always interesting when I see it with a CEO that runs a smaller company versus a CEO with a larger company, because in your mind, you think it would be the opposite, but it's not. A lot of times it's not, from my experience.
Well, if you think about it from a psychological perspective, the smaller company CEO is probably the one who founded it,
True.
has a different appreciation and love for what they've done, whereas the larger the organization, the more the operator comes in to expand and extend, which becomes a little more, not academic, but it is a different mindset. You don't have that same kind of ego and emotion and love for it sometimes.
But the bigger operators actually they have a high standard of excellence in operations.
For sure.
And
yeah.
It's amazing. It's something I always look up to. And the smaller guys presume they have it when they don't. And you really
they accept measuring with a wire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They think that's okay. Yes, exactly. So so if you're a smaller firm, it's important to know, well, the beauty of AI actually is it levels the playing field finally for smaller firms to compete with the large firms.
Yeah.
You can do so much more, so there's no more excuses. And even internally in our company, we use a ton of AI internally to help us. We're trying to predict where the market's going. We're trying to predict different signals. We're trying to see where, like in 5 years, the needs of your customer are going to be different. And I saw it with my own customers. I was joking with one of them. Like 5 years ago, all they wanted me to do was bring in a data point from one system and, a real-time data sensor that was measuring the production of oil. They wanted me to push that meter data directly into their other accounting or some database for their CEOs or reservoir team. I'm not sure. That's all they wanted 5 years ago, right? Today, they're like, can you predict my bottom hole pressure? And I will give you business training. Needs change. And if you're not evolving and if you haven't positioned yourself to meet those needs, that's not a viable business. And I think smaller firms have to be very cognizant of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Sarah, because that's part of an evolution and understanding of how to use the data, the technology, the process. And you actually even, that can affect like how an organization is structured, right? I mean, like you literally you might not build around the typical functional leadership models and execution, because data puts us in a different place where we recognize, there's a ton of opportunity. I just think it's kind of interesting because that's the part that everybody who talks about how AI is going to take every job.
Not really. I'm not fully convinced on that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the opposite, right? It creates new jobs where I start recognizing what else can be done, right?
And see, today with AI, right, every regular developer, for example, well, I mean, I do a lot of developers. Every regular developer gets a promotion. They can be architects now because AI is going to help them. They get an instant promotion, higher value. So it's not that, and there's a lot of services on the market today where they ship code, right? And you have to be a developer to understand and still debug the quality of it. But again, 80% of your work is done. And now you can be an architect. You don't have to be an entry-level developer. Or you could just learn and upgrade your skill set and become a senior level developer. So all of those opportunities should be leveraged.
Yeah.
So guess what? It positions SOTAOG to have architects in our company, which I compete with the larger firms where they pay a lot more for that same skill set. And it's absolutely flattering for me every time. So we've actually had consistent number of bids this year where we bid against multi-billion-dollar firms. And we won one of them, and we're still waiting on results on a few more. But it's absolutely exciting because now we look and feel, and our solutions are just as good. Our outputs are tested, etc. So
and that's the difference, right? I mean, like, as you said, AI is it levels the playing field. And so now if I'm thinking ahead from, like we were talking about, market signals to growth signals, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to look at that, are there any frameworks or processes that you use to convert that market feedback into strategic initiatives? So I now know, what am I going to use that data for, and what am I going to go do next?
It's almost like playing poker. Or like, it's like there's a piece of it like that feels like gambling, because the market signals, it's how you analyze it and you kind of stress test it based on the unique historical experience of your company. That's what I would do. Because if you go all in, you could make wrong assumptions. And if you put in too many, if you risk too much of capital or whatever, resources, whatever you want to call it, into the wrong assumption, you're just setting yourself up for the wrong path. So
I love it. You're going to make bets, but just like in poker, there's odds, and you can play the odds.
You got to figure out those odds and stress test it against your own expertise, right? So, for example, the assumption I made when cloud was first coming on, and I got my first $40,000 customer, right? Yep. I knew that this was going to because I knew the cost of entry was too easy. The barrier of entry was too easy, right? If anyone else, if I could figure it out, I knew an MIT kid could figure it out, right? Like it just wasn't too much to it.
I've always heard the innovation argument is that any good idea, 10 people have thought of it and 3 people are working on it.
Exactly. So my assumption played out. If we didn't pivot, if I didn't set up the company to do optimizations, run engineering calculations on real-time data back then, we would be toast now, right? Because that same customer that only wanted data integration 5 years ago, right? That's all he really wanted. It was a data lake. And everyone talks about data lakes. And I was like, that's just data integration. It's what you do next is what matters.
Well, that's because you came from the ops side, right? So you'd thought about, how do I activate this information? You just were irritated with the fact you couldn't get to it.
Yes. So but it was important that we put the building blocks then. And that's what has helped has gotten us to the table to bid against multi-billion-dollar companies. And it's absolutely exciting. Yeah.
It's incredibly exciting. You guys are going to kill it. I know you are. So if a company is thinking about how they're going to make an investment in a data-driven strategy, right? So if I'm thinking about your types of clientele, what are the common pitfalls? Is it exactly what you just said? Like they don't put the pipes in place and the data is not flowing properly? Or is it access? Or is it the wrong people involved in the project? Like, what do you see happen that keeps people from being successful?
So for my own clients, the chief operating officers, I'll say I see common problems every day. A lot of times, like this is the number one thing I hear from every chief operating officer. It's kind of hilarious now. They say, I spent the money. Trust me, all the sensors are there in the field. Trust me, I approved millions of dollars. So it's got to be there, right? And so anyways, I'll, typically after integration or whatever else, we'll see like the sensor was bought, it was never commissioned.
Sure, perfect. Yeah, you go, okay, I'm glad that they're all out there. Let's see the data flow. And all of a sudden you go,
it was never turned on. It was never turned on. Something else.
I have some bad news for you.
Yeah. So they want pipeline optimization. I can't get the pressure. And then I don't want to share the bad news, right? So I would just say, hey, you know what? It doesn't look like the sensor was turned on. Maybe someone forgot when they commissioned it. I don't know. But guess what? Pipeline optimization is not happening for this section.
I've got bad news.
Yeah. So
What's amazing to me about that is like they're paying for it, right? So that gives you an idea. Like you were talking about operational excellence. Can you imagine, in a large organization, if you put the money towards that, like you're going to at least make sure there's a data flow.
Yes, they at least do that. Yes, so the larger firms at least do that.
Yeah.
But then they have other problems. Like one company, when I went in, and we have to map the data so tightly to deliver optimization. So that's where, like, we're kind of like doing the data quality checks that they don't really pay for, and we're double checking the accuracy because our outputs depend on that, or else our optimization results would be trash, right? And no one would give us more money, or like they wouldn't find the service reliable. So one was they had oil tanks mislabeled as water tanks.
Hey.
I was like, for how long? 4 years. So the water truck haulers have been taking their oil that was valued at probably anywhere between $60 to $100 a barrel every day. 1,000 barrel tanks, right? If you do the math on it, like millions. So they had the sensors. It's just mislabeled.
That's unbelievable.
No, it's actually a lot of fun. Every time I see this.
Because you didn't do it. Yeah.
Because I didn't do it. I know.
Right.
It's kind of fun.
That's amazing. But it's just a great reminder, right? We get into this habit, especially when you're running an SMB, right? If I've got 50 people, 100 people, it's really easy to get lulled into the belief that things are going fine, doing all right, and you don't pay attention to every the minutia of the data, and so that's a great story and painful one that everybody should pay attention to, right? So who's going back and looking at and driving the smaller elements in the business? That's a huge piece.
It's
but
just excellence on the small pieces.
You're getting to the micro data,
Right.
and the macro problem is what got uncovered.
Yes, because every operations, you've got cash flow sensors and then you've got diagnostic sensors. You can, separate your sensors into two buckets, and they both give you valuable information every single day that you could manually use. Like a lot of COOs should actually use their cash flow sensors to know how much cash they're making a day and not be looking at manual reports, right? That would be the first step.
Yeah, it's interesting because you were talking earlier about, humans and how you've identified now like what profitability looks like and what hard work looks like, but what's your sensors on people?
Yeah, that I'm still cracking the code on it. So
I love it.
No advice there.
Well, Sarah, this has been fantastic. We just want to thank you for sharing all of the information you have about your business and what you're working on. And then I think so many organizations can learn from a company like yours because technology and AI you don't look at it as a tech process, you look at it as a cultural change, right? I mean, you're literally building a business around it. And so it's fascinating to get your perspective. I am curious, in closing, if I'm a company that has, I'm CEO, I've got a couple hundred people, and I am thinking about AI, you just talked about like where your growth stage is, what you're thinking about at this stage. If I've gotten to the point where, relatively early in the process, do you have any recommendations on what they should go and leave and do after they finish watching this?
Yeah, I think after they finish watching this, if whatever the number one problem they have, and then kind of step down and see with the existing data sets they already have, can they solve that? Can they make it faster? Can they get an answer to it? Because there's this myth that I have to go get more data. I need all of this, but it's really the data is already there in your organization. It's how you connect the dots and how you run a decision playbook on it with rules and analysis and predictions. And that will give you a lot.
That's super smart, right? Solve your biggest problem as fast as possible, but do it with a systems mindset.
Yeah, and use the existing data you have first.
Yeah, I love it. And make sure that you check the labeling on your tanks if it's oil or water, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Sarah. Thanks so much for being on the leaders list.
Thanks again, Bryon.